Yo, so thanks on the success of the last video where it got 10,000 views. Very much appreciated. Didn't expect it to blow up like that. Today I'll be doing an even more controversial video, which is tiered obbies versus towers. I'll have multiple important topics where towers or tiers will get a point, and at the end, the one with the most points will win. Make sure to like and sub and comment if you want to see more content like this, and comment if you disagree with me on anything. With that out of the way, the first two topics I have will be pretty short, as they will be based off of gaining skill, as there are two main types of skill sets that are only really mastered if you play a mix of tiered obbies and towers. So the first one is going to be gaining raw skill and having physics knowledge. This round should really require no explanation as to who wins this. To put shortly, tiered obbies, especially tier 16 plus, start to use very difficult jumps that usually require strats on almost every single jump. And due to tiers being 2 to 3 minutes long on average versus towers being 15 to 20, tiers obviously win this point. So our second topic is going to be gaining skill in gameplay variety and consistency. This is the other side to being good at obbies, and obviously towers win this point for the same reasons as previously mentioned. Towers are often obviously a lot longer, and as well they have a much larger variety of gameplay, including a lot of client objects in the more modern towers. So our third topic is going to be overall quality. This is where we now get into some more controversial things, but this round is actually a pretty easy win for towers, and here's why. First, let's compare the decoration from some modern towers versus just say the average tiered obby or even some modern tiered obbies. If you say the tiered obbies have better decoration, you are straight up tweaking. Secondly, let's look at the gameplay variety. This obviously also goes to towers due to a lot of very unique and fun use of not only modern purism but client objects, with some builders even inventing new types of client objects right now. And third, let's look at the gameplay quality. This one is much more debatable, but due to tiers being entirely made from purism, for a lot of people, they tend to get repetitive and boring. Tiers, as a result, have died out a little in popularity over the years, while the opposite is true for towers. Since 2020, Eternal Towers of Hell has, as far as I know, quintupled their popularity and player base, and with many players all the way from 2016 to 2020 still playing today. I can also say from a personal standpoint, the overall gameplay in modern towers is definitely way better. However, the earlier game towers in EToH that were made like 2018, yeah, those are pretty bad, but those are not the ones we're measuring. So this point goes to towers. So our fourth topic we have is simplicity and beginner friendliness. This one may also be a little controversial, but there's several reasons why I picked tiers over towers for this one. First, tiers are obviously a lot more simple and easy to pick up. I've introduced many of my friends who are new to obbies to both tiers and EToH. They pretty much all unanimously said they would rather play tiered obbies rather than towers. Even most of my Tower of Hell friends ended up deviating to tiered obbies rather than towers back in 2020. Secondly, towers are often very learny and very punishing, which can be demotivating for someone with little motivation to begin with. And third, you could argue towers here, since Eternal Towers of Hell has its own game with a beginner practice tower, but that's honestly not very effective at either hooking new players or even teaching them at all. Until Purgatorio, the beginner area comes out, this point will go to tiers. So the fifth topic we have is enjoyment. This is perhaps the most controversial thing I could bring up in a video like this. Are tiers or towers more fun? Well, since I'm trying to be objective and non-opinionated, I'm going to give you a half-assed answer to that question. We can generally deduce that on average, people find towers more enjoyable due to there being like 20 tower players for every one tiered player. On top of this, here are two well-known players, Crimzaneth and Gene the Obvious, who both extensively main tiered for some time, and they probably both thought I was stupid for even asking them whether they enjoyed towers or tiered obbies more when the answer was very clearly towers. I feel as if some opinions deciding this whole thing here is unfair, however, as this is like arguing whether chocolate or candy tastes better. Like it just varies from person to person. So I'll be giving a point to both for this round, but if you were to give the point to somebody, it would go to towers. So, as our sixth topic, we're going to have accessibility and appeal. This is definitely a category at which we can more decisively pick a winner, and here's why. Firstly, most towers, especially the super popular ones, are in towers games such as Eternal Towers of Hell or Another Towers of Stupidity. They are, in other words, all in one place, and with a recent update a few months ago, you only need to beat 85 towers to have full access to the full game's 370 plus towers. Eternal Towers of Hell, for example, also has their own separate practice game that includes every intense plus tower in the game. Also, just as a side note, I don't know why, but no one has used this EToH formula for tiered obbies. Like just make a game that's just like EToH, but it just used tiered obbies instead. Apparently, there's a game like that in development right now, but even then, it took a long time for someone to think of that. Secondly, you can argue that games like Practice Please have obbies all in one place, but oftentimes the tier you want to play isn't even there, and in many situations you can't even find a practice place for the tier you want to play. Tiered obbies don't truly have a centralized game like towers do, like with EToH with their grindy progression system, credits, and achievements that show up on your tower profile, such as your hardest tower you beat. There's more of an incentive to play because of this, and therefore it has much more appeal. And lastly, even in the off chance that we have both a tower and a tiered obby that aren't in any tower game or practice place, you can usually just search up the name of the tower on Roblox and it will just show up almost every time. As these towers have very specific names that will usually always show up if you just simply enter it. With tiered obbies, though, this becomes a bit of a coin flip. You might be able to find the obby, but not a practice place for it. Or you may have to go to YouTube and look in the descriptions of completion videos to even find the obby to begin with. Some tiered obbies, such as Aurora and Firework, as examples, they name themselves things that are like just common words, so therefore they don't really show up when you search them in the Roblox search bar. With all this in mind, towers definitely win this point. So our seventh and last topic is going to be originality and creativity. This should be obvious as to which side boasts more originality and creativity, and it largely banks on the reasons I've already covered. So here's just a quick explanation. Towers have much more variety in them due to their use of client objects, and they also have more gameplay as they are longer. They have much more options for the obby itself, and it's just going to lead to more originality and creativity overall. If you want some examples, ever seen a tiered obby have stuff like this? Or this? Or this? Yeah, this point goes to towers. There's just absolutely no arguments to be made here. So, with the final score being 5-3, we can pretty confidently say that overall, towers are better. But like anything, tiered obbies are better in the aspects I gave them points for. And if, for example, you're a time trialer or a speedrunner trying to improve, I would recommend you play tiered obbies, for example, as being a speedrunner, it focuses more on raw corner cutting and as much perfection as possible in most scenarios, which tiered obbies would train you better on. If you were to ask the majority of people, including myself, which one to play as a casual or more for just for fun, I would definitely, however, say towers. So that's it. Let me know if you disagree down in the comments. Like and sub. Yeah, blah, blah. Goodbye.